Assalamu alaikum, hey, and welcome to the Muslim Life Coach Institute podcast. This is Abdul Shahid, master coach, trainer, and therapist, and this is where I help you to coach yourself and your clients on how to overcome anxiety, fear, and all of the emotional baggage that keeps so many of us stuck in our minds, our lives, and our relationships. Welcome back to this week's episode, where we are actually on episode 45. SubhanAllah. What we're focusing on today is essential for every human being, right? This is what creates for us stability. And if you've gone through your life struggling with doubt, self-doubt, doubting other people, doubting your relationships, doubting your work, doubting your worth, doubting your creator. I mean, subhanAllah, that's like a, no one likes to say that, but that's actually what they do. And I don't mean doubting in whether or not there is a creator, but what I'm talking about is doubting whether or not like Allah has you in his plans, if he's taking care of you. And that often happens because of the struggles that we're going through. So here's the thing, look, in the next 12 or so episodes, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to address like key fundamental issues that every human being needs to deal with so that they can have a good quality of life. And you know, we'll address it from the angle of problems. So in this session, what I want to talk to you about is the doubt that you probably have to deal with on a regular basis. And that doubt, it keeps you in a state of flux. It keeps you in a state of emotional highs and lows. When the doubt is reduced, you don't have when you're not having as many doubts as as the worst days. You feel better. You feel more stable. You feel like your life is all right. Whereas when the doubts start to increase, like that's when we start to actually struggle with ourselves. We start to struggle in our relationships. We start to struggle in our mental and spiritual well-being. And here's the thing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, he says right at the beginning of the Quran, right at the beginning of the Quran, he says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. Right, this is the book where there's no doubt. Right? Imagine this. This is the book where there's no doubt. So, you know what we do? Like, we become focused on trying to gain achievements. We really try and attain more, like set goals for ourselves when we're younger, and we don't do it consciously. Sometimes we do it consciously, but we say we're going to grow up and become, engineers and doctors and like lawyers or footballers or whatever it is that people set themselves, and you've set yourself some goals, like either consciously or unconsciously, and as you grow up, like when you lose sight of what you're trying to do in your life and you get derailed, or you have excessive like negative thinking, like what tends to happen is that we start to make mistakes. We start to not realize our achievements or our goals, and as that happens, or we have bad experiences. You get married and you have a really bad experience in your marriage, or you go to uni and you have a bad experience at uni. Like people have all sorts of bad experiences, and those bad experiences, what they tend to do is that they create for us all of this negative internal chatter, and add the waswas to that, add some, habitual thinking to that, add some, negative comments from the people around us, and before you know it, you've got like a vicious cloud of negativity. And when you find yourself in the middle of that, you start to doubt everything. And it affects your spiritual connection, like your connection to Allah, right? It affects your connection to people around you, because you start to be in a state of insecurity, in a state of doubt, right? And when you fall into that state of doubt, then it affects your work, it affects the way you see yourself. You start to, second guess everything that you do. And when you start to second guess everything you do, that really throws your life into turmoil. Like a lot of times, like especially my clients, my trainee coaches and therapists, my clients who are going through like life transformation, like when they come in with so many doubts. And the worst of those doubts is that they doubt themselves. They doubt every decision they make. They feel like they don't know how to make decisions. They doubt just about every area of their life. And when you fall into that level of doubt, then what that really does is that it affects your mental well-being. And when your mental well-being is off kilter, it's like, you're not feeling it. You're never feeling it. Like you're most of the time you're spending your time in this negative emotions. Like and when you find yourself in that state, then what that does is that it throws you into this constant struggle. And when you find yourself in that constant struggle, then what happens is that you think that you don't make right decisions, like you're messing up all your relationships, and you think that the people around you, they're not helping you, they're not supporting you enough, they don't care about you. You think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala isn't taking care of you. And when you're in that state, then what happens is that we act out, we start shouting, we get defensive, we just really like find ourselves on edge. And when you find yourself on edge, then what will happen is that will actually make all of your worst nightmares, all of the things that you've been thinking about, that you've been fretting about, all of that comes to fruition. Because actually what tends to happen is that you'll get into disputes, you'll get into arguments with people, or you'll withdraw from people, and you won't get into arguments, but you withdraw. And when you're in a state of withdrawal, like you start to feel disconnected. Like, of course you're disconnected because you're not communicating with people. You're not communicating with the people around you, and they're probably walking around on eggshells around you. And when we find ourselves in that situation, what happens? Like, it just gets worse, and we stay in that state for a long period of time. And this is the kind of stuff that leads to long-term depressive thinking. This is the kind of stuff that leads to anxieties, like always feeling like we can't cope with life. And when you find yourself in that state where you feel like you can't cope with life, then you're gonna start to find life unbearable. Now, if you're thinking, this guy's really depressing me, like, I want to give you some good news. Like, I want you to step back, and I want you to go right back to the beginning of this, where I started off. I started off by telling you, like, what's actually happening. Like, this is like the line of events. This is like the trajectory, the way that it begins and where it takes us. And I want you just to be aware of it. The reason I told you this is so that you could be aware of what's actually happening. Because if you're aware of what's actually happening, you can actually do something about it. Let's go back to certainty, because that's what you really need, right? If you're in a state of certainty, like, you're not going to be plagued with this indecision. You're not going to be plagued with all these doubts. It's not going to affect your relationships. If you're in a state of certainty, you can actually do well in life. And you can find your way out of any type of depressive thinking, the anxiousness, and even panic attacks. Look, many of the people that I've worked with, my clients who go through panic attacks, like, they find their way out of panic attack when they gain that level of stability. And stability comes from that certainty of, I'm going to be all right, I am all right, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is taking care of me. Like, how do you know? How do you know that you can do this? This is the key. And I want you to understand, because listen, what I train people on, the journey that I take them through, the psychological transformations that we focus on, is purely 100% through the huda. Right? Why the huda? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. This is the book where there's la raiba, there is no doubt.
There's no doubt. So the science of the nafs, this spiritual psychology model, this is the therapeutic, this is the model of therapy and transformation. And it's not just that, it's about doing well in life. It's about excelling in life. It's about really getting yourself to a place where you can love life, right? And how do you do that? You got to have a level of stability, certainty, and you got to feel like you can do okay in life. And the way that you do that is by applying this huda. So obviously this is different to traditional Islamic studies, because obviously we're focused on, therapeutic intervention, like about mental health and wealth. Like that's what we're focused on. Like, when we take you through the science of the nafs, this is what we're doing. So as I'm talking you through this, I want you to just see, I painted for you a trajectory so that you could see, and my guess is you could probably resonate with a lot of what I said, right? Because you know this through your own life experience. And the fact is, if you know it and I know it, the one who created you and I knows it better than us, has a solution better than the one that you and I can come up with, right? So if we can rely on that, then we gain that level of certainty, we gain that level of trust, we gain that level of, I'm going to be all right. And if you could feel okay, if you could feel not lonely but supported, if you could feel like all of your life is being taken care of, and you had that stability, you had those doubts, if you could wipe out the doubts, then what would that do for you? Because the reality is that if you could wipe out the doubts, it would actually wipe out your problems, right? Because the reason you're having those problems is because of the doubts, right? And if you could wipe that out, then subhanAllah, you would have the most wonderful life, because you're no longer in a state of insecurity. You're no longer in a state of constantly second guessing yourself. And that's what this is all about. So look, I want you to think about what I've said, and I'm going to leave you on this. Like, think about what I've said and just go back to the trajectory of what's happening in your life. Go back. If you can become aware of what's really happening, you can actually wipe it away. You can actually get rid of it. If you can get rid of that doubt, then your life it becomes stable again. You get onto a trajectory of stability and doing well. And when you can do that, you're going to start to thrive. You're going to start to love your life. And that's what we're sharing in these podcasts. So over the next 12 weeks, I'm going to be sharing like little nuggets like this. But I want you to pay close attention to what I'm sharing, because these are not just little nuggets. They will transform the way you're experiencing your life if you will actually do it, if you will take action on it. And if you do that, then you can love your life again. Like, you can truly love your life again. And I'm hoping that this has nailed it for you. And if really you wanna just reflect on what I've shared here. Have a wonderful day. Jazakumullah khair.
Hey, if you're ready to actually take the steps to transform your life, I want to invite you to join me on the Nafs Life Transformation Coaching Program, where I help you to take the steps to making the transformation of your mind, your relationships, and your life. Just go over to themuslimlifecoach.org/live. That's the THE muslimlifecoach.org/live.